Alright guys, little 2022 wrap up video, just going through what we did this year. So pretty much my first year doing YouTube and catching a host of species on lures, so casting soft plastics and jigs and that sort of things to catch a number of species. So I'm going to break it down into little areas and specific fish and get a little run through the gear I used and how I did it and where I went and that sort of thing. So first of all, we're going to do jump and pin Jew. So basically I was going down to the jump and pin, which is the south of me here, and targeting some bigger Jew. You know, bigger Jew, I mean 1 meter plus, sort of on plastics. Is pretty good size Jew. So this rod will probably feature a fair bit in my videos, but this is a relatively new rod. This is the Caden 745 from Dobbins. So these Caden rods are relatively new to Dobbins. So we've been giving these ones a go. This one particularly is quite powerful. So like I said, all those fish down the jumper pin are pretty big. They're all sort of 1 meter plus, so or near a meter and just over a meter. So some with a bit of power to get them in. You do have some shark issues down the pin bar, but this season that I was down, I didn't see any at all, so which was good. I usually run 50-pound castaway on this reel, Sunlight Castaway, and a 50 or 60-pound FC 100 litre, 3/4 to an ounce jig head, and a Molex fork flex on the back of that, so 5-inch jerk bait, 5 and 6-inch jerk baits. Fishing those sort of 10-meter mark for those Jews. So how I generally do it is I basically go down and I'll start at the sort of top of the bar sort of area and sound down along the ledge. There's this very distinct ledge there that runs from a couple of meters and drops down to about 14 meters. So the Jew use that ledge as a bit of a highway, traveling up and down along that ledge looking for food. So the time of year I was there was sort of late winter into spring, and you get a pretty good run of tailor through those areas. So I think those fish basically moving through looking for those schools of tailor and targeting tailor. So that sort of 5-inch plastic, so like a little tailor, I guess, or something like that. And that's the plan anyway. And sort of both tides, run in, run out. I've got fish on both. They seem to be a little bit more mobile in the run in, probably, you know, out off the ledge a little bit further and just sort of cruising. And that's generally you see more tailor coming to the bar too, as on that run in tide. So, and then on the run out tide, they sort of push hard up against the ledge, and obviously I think they're waiting for fish to come off the shallows and into the deeper water, so they are harder up against that ledge on the run out tide. So I did actually catch more fish, I think, on the run out than I did in the run in, but I think you can definitely catch them on both tides as well. One fish I did catch during the run in was on a slow pitch jig, which is a bit different. These palm slow blats, so that's an 80 gram slow blat there. I mean that's a pretty big lure, or a pretty heavy lure, most people will say. But realistically, it's not a big offering. I mean that's still small in that 5-inch jerk shad. So it's not a big profile. The 80 gram doesn't necessarily sink twice as fast as a 40 gram. It's probably just gonna dart around faster than a 40 gram. So a 40 gram is probably gonna go like that, and an 80 is gonna flutter and kick and do a lot more faster things. So like how I use my soft plastics, I'm generally working the lure pretty fast. I don't mind a lure with a bit of fast action, because I think that can really turn the fish on at times. So don't be scared of heavy weights. So, you know, the weight's not relatively going to sink twice as fast. Everyone seems to think that's the case, but it's not always the case. The shape of the lure will come into effect, and you know, the sink rate might go from with a 40 gram of this shape to an 80 might be you know, half a second or 2 seconds to get down in 10 meters. So it's not a huge amount of difference basically. So I run the assists on those with those little panic baits. So they're a little Yamashita panic bait. It's a relatively small octopus skirt. So you probably see other brands now with really big octopus skirts on the assist hooks, and I think that's fine as long as it doesn't detract the action or lure. And I think potentially if you've got too much resistance up there, you do run the risk of actually distorting the designed or you know, the action desired by the manufacturer. So I try and minimise what I do there. I think people use, you know, BKK Sea Ranger, I think is this. I think they're a good option because they're not too bulky and they're not going to distort the action of the lure, just attract more fish basically. So that's my little jig setup, 60 pound nylon leader, system shock, and some P3 on a P4 SW game rod. So that's a new rod again for this year. It's an NS SW game, so it's a slow pitch P4 rod, 6'4". All right, so that's the gear I guess I was using down the jumping pin. The technique is generally, like I said, just to drive down towards the bar section there and travel along the ledge, keeping an eye very closely on the sounder. So it's a pretty tricky area to find them, I must admit. A few people I know have been down there and have given it a go and not sort of seen them. I'm not surprised because the bottom is so undulating. You've got this drop off where it just really drops. You've got little lumps and humps with throw shadows all over the place, and it really does take a lot of really paying attention to the sounder and studying what you're seeing to find those fish. But the beauty of them is there's been huge school down there. So when I do find them, sometimes there's no mistaking. Go, that's definitely them. But there's certainly a lot of shadowing from the bottom, which does make it difficult. Unlike Moreton Bay, where you might have just like a straight sand bottom, and then you'll have fish. So you'll notice the fish quite easily in the Moreton Bay, for example, with that straight flat sand bottom, as opposed to that ridged ledge that you see down the jumping pin. All right, let's have a little quick look at some of the action of jumping pin jewies, and we'll get on to the next species after this.
Obviously, there's a bit of artistic flair with some of your.
Yeah. Oh, I like to try and capture the excitement that I get when I go fishing. You know, like that's what I try and first thing in the morning and how beautiful it is and stuff like that, and just I like getting excited to go fishing, so I try and share that something. Caden does it again. Call it a metre 4 of nice dew from the pin bar here. 95 centimetres. Be about a metre. Quite a good dew. This one will probably push a metre, I think. Might stick him on the mat and have a look. That's a cracking dew on the jig. Okay, there's another metre on the dot. This one. Took the fork flex down there. 3/4 ounce jig head. Another solid fish. That's my second one.
Alright, next species on the list is giant herring from Moreton Bay. This year was an exceptionally good year for giant herring. I think I did 4 sessions for probably 30 or so fish, and finally seen some bigger ones in Moreton Bay, probably up around that metre mark. I think I lost the bigger ones that I hooked that would have been a metre, but I definitely got some in there over 90, which is a very good size for Moreton Bay itself. Usually it's sort of a 700, 800, maybe a 900 millimetre fishery. And this year we saw plenty of 80s to 90s, which is really good, and plenty of fish again, which is really good too. So again, just using your sounder, sand undulations in the bay, so you'll get a sort of higher current area where there's like a sandbar, and the current scallops little divots in the sand. So the giant herring will like to sit in behind those little scallops. So you'll have a flat bit of sand, or just drop like that, and then drop like that, and the GH will be sitting right in behind those little sand drop-offs and waiting for that current to come over it, and obviously the bait sort of comes down along it and they'll pop up and dart around and chase those fish. So I usually use my bait cast gear. This year I got a new rod, again a new rod for NS, is this Medusa Edge. So this is the spin model. It's a 6 to 10 kilo rod, so it's a 12 to 20 pound, and again using Molex fork flexes and I like lures basically to entice those fish in, and a very fast hopping action of the lure. So I'm really, whack, hopping that lure quite aggressively and fast, just to get those fish to respond, because they're kind of a strange fish in that if you just sort of hop it around gently, they're not really going to have a crack at it. You've got to move that lure around quite quickly. They do have a very abrasive mouth, so you need a little bit heavier leader material to ensure you won't get rubbed off from their mouth. As they jump, they'll shake their head like crazy, and that'll saw through the leader pretty quickly. So I generally suggest like a 40-pound leader. I did catch quite a few on 25, but I did lose a few fish on 25 as well. So yeah, 40-pound leader, probably like a 3/8 to ½ ounce head, because I'm fishing in sort of anywhere from about 5 to 7 meters, and like I said, there's a bit of current there too, so we need a little bit of weight to get down the bottom, and then working that lure, they really swipe at the lure, and that sort of leads me to think why I think they pop out of those sand undulations really fast, because the bite's sort of a real swipe bite. It's not like a Jew, it's just eating and it's got it. It's just sort of whacking at the lure really fast. So you have to keep swinging at them basically to try and set that hook, and you will miss quite a few bites. In some of the footage there, I've got multiple bites that I'm getting every sort of hop, but it takes the third or the fourth one before I actually finally hook the fish. So that's obviously on a spin reel. So the spin reel I like to wind up, get that tension up quick, because you'll get that bite, and then they'll either run at you or away from you, and change directions, and speed is just wild. They're such a great fish to catch. I love catching them. So spin reel makes it easier for me to wind that handle and get that tension up to the fish quicker. Alternatively, you can use like a bait caster with a very high gear ratio, like this Metanium I've got here with that's like a 7.3 to 1 ratio. So it's a very fast ratio to get up tight to that fish as well. So a little new leader too I've been trying this year. It's just come out from Sunline. It's the System Shock FC. So it's a fluorocarbon, and it's a stretchier. You've probably seen this before, but it's a stretchier fluorocarbon from Sunline. It's a relatively expensive fluorocarbon, like most fluorocarbons now, and these higher poundages are getting quite dear because of the shortage of materials from the electric vehicle manufacturer. So it's got a lot of stretch. Basically that's good for when a fish jumps, and you've got 2 meters a leader and a good 30-40 centimeters of stretch. All those head shakes can get absorbed by that leader material as that fish is jumping, when you've got that bit of stretch in that system, which is really good to keep those hooks in. So at times most of the fish were caught on plastics at times there. I think 1 or 2 sessions the fishing got quite tough, so I had to use a soft vibe. And the problem with the soft vibe is you've got really small trebles, and they easily throw them. You got the weight of the vibe itself, so usually 20 odd grams, and that's flinging around their mouth, and it can fly out quite easily. And then the other issue I've got with vibes is they can take the lure quite deep, get into the gill cavity and kill them. So just the way they bite and swipe at it, that's a unfortunate byproduct of the way they eat the lure, that vibes become a bit of an issue for targeting with those giant herrings. So, but yeah, such a crazy fish, so fast, so many jumps. Really love targeting this fish. I highly recommend, whether it's Moreton Bay or wherever it might be, if you can get onto some giant herring. It's just it's one of those fish you've got to experience to understand the speed and the direction changes and the height of the jumps. It's just fantastic. So all right, let's have a little bit of a look at that action now. Bit of GH in Moreton Bay.
Oh, that's a better one. No, it's just smoking, bro.
All right, the next one is Moreton Bay Jewfish, which I've done probably the most of in my videos, and one of the fish that I love catching the most, and an area I love fishing a lot too. So some pretty epic sunrises go over Moreton Bay every year, and I really love capturing and enjoying and showing those sunrises. I head out in the day's fishing and hopefully bang a few jewies and whatever else is going on. But yeah, so the jewfish, again, I'm targeting on this Dobbins Cadence 745 for the most part, and I'm running that on a Revo Beast. So the Revo Beast is a really good reel in that it's got a large line capacity, so I run that 50-pound castaway, which is a 200-meter spool. So I get plenty of line on this reel. So you know, if a tuna pops up, which has happened before, I can throw this and land a longtail, or you know, a big Spanish or something like that if it came along. And you know, it's got a lot of drag pressure too. I think they rate these to you know, over 30 pounds of drag. So really big drag system. I've had to actually change the drag washers once on this reel because it's had a good flogging both in Moreton Bay and up in Gladstone and places like that, catching things that it shouldn't probably catch. And fighting a few sharks up there, mind you. That sort of did a bit of damage to the drag washers there, I believe. So, but yeah, no, this combo is really well balanced. It's got a really big, long, wide handle here on the from the standard with these Revo Beasts, and generally, yeah, I'm the same sort of jig head, that 3/4 ounce, either a TT headlock with these fork flexes, or the newer BKK jig head, which I've kind of just started using a bit more recently. So it's got they got sort of two toe points on the lure there, which I don't really use the two toe points. But the big thing with this soft plastic and this jig head is that hook. You know, that hook is really strong. They don't hold the lure on as good as a TT, in my opinion. So I do put a bit of glue on there, a bit of Loctite branded gel control to hold that plastic on. But the hook is I just can't straighten it. Basically, I've got the thumb on the spool. I'm running sort of 5 or 6 kilos of drag, I reckon, trying to muscle these, you know, jewfish from 80 centimeters to sort of 1.10 meters. you know, around schools of sharks and stuff like that. You know, as we come out of winter into spring and into summer, we see a lot more shark activity, and for that reason I need to go a lot harder on these fish. So, you know, a TT, all being a very good jig head, doesn't have quite as strong a hook as these BKKs. So I've sort of gone to these BKKs, especially as we go in towards summer. As it gets a bit hotter, I'll use these a bit more to try and, you know, pull the brakes on those sharks a bit quicker and trying to lose too many fish to them. Which luckily I haven't. I don't think in the videos that I've been fishing I've actually had a fish eaten. I've had a couple of ones run through the line and break the braid, but I believe those fish got away as it just hit it with the fin or something like that as it was chasing it around, and I think the fish got away. So the other one I use is the slow pitch gear again. Again, that's that 80 gram slow bat with those assists on it, that sort of thing. Really a sort of you know, a slow pitch approach where I'm dropping the lure to the bottom, and, you know, a couple of turns, couple of lifts of the rod to get that rod to bounce, and it darts the jig one way to the other way, and then I'm only bringing it up a metre or so because the dew are really hanging on the bottom. So you want to have that lure dart up a metre or two, and then basically just hit that free spool, and she'll dart and flutter and come down. It's on the drop a lot of the bites occur, and we get a lot of hookups with the hooks right on the nose of the lure, so they've just grabbed the jig and I've struck and then basically pinned them on the outside of the nose. So they're really grabbing on the drop and just grabbing the jig. So occasionally you will get the whole thing down inside the fish, but a lot of time it's on the nose. You've hooked them with the assist. So keep an eye on those assists, make sure they're super sharp, because the last thing you want to do is miss a bite or pull the hooks because the hook's gone a bit blunt or something like that. So that's probably my favourite way to catch them. It's not that often that we do get to catch them that often on that, because they need to be schooled up pretty hard, and the fish need to be pretty aggressive, and that kind of hasn't really happened last year. I have got a couple, obviously, as we come out of that sort of flooding scenario. I've got a couple on the slow pitch, which was good, and hopefully as we get through summer I'll catch a few more on slow pitch, which is so much fun. It's such a great way to catch a number of species, and especially dewies, and Moreton Bay is high up there. So obviously a few locations which I'll look for them on a certain trip. You can find them at Harry's and at Peel and Coochie and Macleay Island, you name it. There's a number of places. Everyone sort of knows where to go to have a look for a dew to a degree. But yeah, just really focusing again on the sounder, you know, driving along. As I said before, you've got a sandy bottom in Moreton Bay, as opposed to the jumping pin where it's all sort of undulated and very hard to read. So just flat sand, and then seeing fish hanging on flat sand can be quite easy to find. So positioning the boat, super important. So getting up in front of the fish and drifting the lures back onto them is pretty critical. A lot of people will just go, there they are, I'm on them, drop down. I like to get a little bit in front of them so that I'm leading the lure back to the fish, because what you'll have is, if you've been to SeaWorld or seen underwater footage of jewfish before, they generally will swim in a bit of a V or a block, and they'll go along and they'll all be facing the same direction. They all sort of change direction together and that sort of thing. So I want to have them pointing this way, generally into the current, and I want to get my lure in front of the block of fish, and I'll have that lure coming back towards the fish, so that those lead fish, which I think are probably the more aggressive fish that are all going along, and you might have 10 sets of eyes or more all looking at this one lure, and they're sort of, each one's looking at it going, are you going to eat it, you're going to eat it, and generally one of them will come in if they're on the chew and bite that lure. So it's generally those lead fish that I want to try and get that lure to. I don't really want to drop the lure into the middle of school. I want to drop it down before the school and bring it back into the school. I mean, there's certainly days where it won't matter. They'll just eat it if you get there, but they certainly won't deviate from their direction to go and eat that lure. So you really need to be accurate in your boat positioning. So, you know, really paying attention to the sounder, making sure everything's right before you drop the lure, and sometimes you just miss. I mean, like I said, by the time your lure is going to come from the top to the bottom, I mean, Harry's, that could be up towards 20 meters. So it could take a number of seconds to get that lure from the surface to the bottom, and the fish may vary their course and you just miss them. So you may need to take multiple times to approaches to get that lure in front of the fish, but well worth it because you know, great fighting fish, great eating fish in my opinion, and a great lot of fun to go out there and catch a few jewies in a day. So let's have a look at some Moreton Bay Jewie action now. Alright, the next little video I'm going to look at is some of the threadfin action that I had both around here and up further north, and some of the gear I used for them. So Jackal Trans Am's probably my favourite soft vibe for targeting threadfin. Now I've been playing with some hooks. I usually use Decoy Wise 21s, which are I think a 2x strong treble, not overly strong, but super sharp, which is super important for me to set the hooks into these threadfin, because they have a tendency to miss bites, and you know, especially locally, if you're only going to get 2 or 3 bites in a day, you really need to make sure that those bites stick. So the stickiest, sharpest possible hook you can get on is pretty good idea for me. So I've just recently, last few months, testing some newer Van Fook trebles. These are called a CT68, and I do use a CT58 as well, which is a 2x strong, but 2 and 3x strong trebles. You know, I wouldn't use them for chasing barra, and I don't think you really need to use them for chasing jewfish and stuff like that. But threadfin, like I said, I think you need as sharp a possible treble as you can get to make sure that bite connects and stays on. So those are the new trebles I've been playing on, these Jackal Trans Am's now, FLT, sorry, Trans Am's, not Jackal. These are a pretty expensive lure, but you know, I'll try not to use them around rock or timber or stuff like that. If I've got fish that are on the chew and they're not too fussy, I'll use a Nomad 95 Nomad Vertrex, or a a 85mm Samaki vibe as well, which come pretty good with BKK 663 trebles on it, which are pretty good for threadfin as well. So that's another good lure that's out of the box, pretty good to have a go at some threadfin as well, in my opinion. So I use a 40-pound leader. Again, it's that newer System Shock fluorocarbon, just gives me a bit of stretch. Again, a very abrasive, hard mouth. I mean, these fish don't really jump, but occasionally they do, but they don't often jump. Basically, they just swipe their head around or under the water occasionally, but just a very abrasive mouth. So 40 pound generally is a bit of a must. You can use lighter, but you do run the risk of losing a potentially quite a big one. So that's my favourite lure. I've been running this on the Medusa Edge 10 to 20. I've got a Tranks 150 on that. Another big player for me this year, something I've changed a lot of my reels around to, is these Gamexus knobs. Now I've got pretty much a Gamexus on just about every reel now. Some of the reels come out standard with very good long handles, but those bigger handles just make it easier for me to grab onto and get a bit more speed going to crank the lure in quicker, or just keep up tight to those fish. So that high gear, again, a 7 ratio basically to keep those trebles in that lure in the fish, so that having slack line has the potential to lose that fish. So a high gear when it comes to trebles. Soft plastic's not so important, but definitely with trebles I like to have a high gear reel to try and keep those trebles in the fish better. The other outfit I used a bit is again, I've just not long picked up this rod, and I did give it a bit of a birthday or an introductory blooding up north on some big threadfin up north. Well, 95 to 1.5 metre sort of sized threadfin, and that's a top of the line Dobbins Champion Extreme. Quite an expensive rod with quite an expensive reel there. It's a Shimano Conquest 100, and again, couldn't help myself but buy some cool Gamexus knobs to match that reel. So I'm running a 30-pound castaway on this reel, and 25-pound System Shock FC leader. New colours of the Moloch Shad 3.5 inch. Now, quite a small lure for most people, but yeah, definitely something that works quite well with those threadfin. I'm running sort of anywhere from a 1/4 to a 1/2 ounce jig head with these. Now I use a TT Head Hunter Extreme, so it's a yellow packet jig head. Not every shops have these jig heads, but they're a really good size gape. You get quite a big gape on this hook for the 3.0, so it's more like a 5.0, say, in a headlock, and I don't need that headlock keeper for this plastic. So a normal type keeper is better, and these are quite a strong hook. These are a stronger hook than your headlock jig heads. So Head Hunter Extreme's a pretty good little jig head to stick in sort of your normal type soft plastics, not those stretchy type soft plastics. So something to try out for those plastics. All right, let's again just finding the fish on the sound is pretty critical, and then really just keying on areas where they're generally going to hang. They don't mind a bit of an eddy or something like that. So if you've got a bit of a bank, and the current might hit the bit of a bank, and there might be a little a gap in behind it, and it creates a bit of a swirly whirly eddy. I find that the threadfin do like to sort of target those areas at times, just to get a free feed, a bit of bait flicking around, stuff like that. But like a lot of fish, they are where you find them, and you've just got to look and find them. So a bit of time on the sounder, driving around, looking around, certainly can be worthwhile when targeting every fish, and especially these threadfin as well. So all right, let's have a little look at the threadfin action. It's a fish I like to target quite a lot, and yeah, a lot of speed again, and a lot of fighting, and again, pretty good eating too. So I do keep the odd one for a feed. So let's have a little bit of this action now too.
Oh, smoking. Got to be a threadfin. Wow. Wow.
Alright, so that's a bit of a wrap up of the year. I did some other stuff as well, like I did a bit of freshwater trout fishing, so I picked myself up a nice little 4-weight TFO combo this year, little LK Legacy to take to cast tiny little flies at these beautiful little trout. So that was a really good bit of fun. Not everyone's cup of tea catching trout on fly, but yeah, for me when I'm travelling in those areas for work, it's well worth putting the fly on because they are a ton of fun. I really do enjoy targeting them. We also did a little bit of chasing some squire in the flats in Moreton Bay, pretty unsuccessfully, unfortunately. A few fish, some sweet lip and stuff like that, but something I'll probably do a fair bit more moving forward. And I've got this little Dobbins Caden 700 to do that, so it's just a little 4 to 8 pound rod, so nice and light, just to cast little 1/12 and 1/8 plastics at the reef edge for little snappers. It's good fun. Occasionally you'll come across a better snapper around 600, but for the most part you're really catching sort of 40 to 50 centimetre snapper. So you don't need overly heavy gear. I'm just running a P1 Sunline 80V with a shooter invisible camo leader. Usually run sort of a 10-pound leader to try and get those fish in. You want to fish light because heavy leaders can shy the fish off. So anything from 6 to 12 pound leader is probably the best bet to target the snappers and the shallows. But something I haven't done a lot of this year, but I tend to do a lot more of in the future. Something I used to do a lot of. Unfortunately, the fishery isn't what it was. It was a pretty good fishery, say 10 years ago, and a little bit tough going now compared to back then. But certainly great fun and worth having a crack at as well. So that's another thing I've done, and I will do a fair bit more in the new year with it as well. All right, also I'd like to just say thanks everyone for subscribing, liking and commenting on the videos. Hopefully keep the content producing the same level in 2023, and mix up the fishing probably a little bit more. Try and do a little bit more up north. Trying to get some pelagics. Definitely want to do a fair bit more slow pitch stuff and that sort of thing. So looking forward to this next coming year. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope you enjoyed this video. It gets you excited to get out for the new year and try and catch some cool fish. All right, thanks guys. Catch up.